before we get into details, I think I want to really just set the baseline here. And so I would like each of you to just take a minute and explain what you're doing so that everyone knows. Clear.
You go first.
You go ahead.
Okay. So, hi everybody. It's great to be here. I co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition. It was actually back in 2009. And I came to co-founding the organization as a visual artist who had been making work for, well, now it's over 30 years out of plastic bags that I cut up and sew back together and show as 2- and 3-dimensional pieces in fine art galleries and foundations and museums. But I had been seeing more and more plastic. Basically, I discovered that there was a problem by seeing it in the ocean. And then looking at the material I was using for my work and thinking about the impact of that and seeing that some of the pieces I was making after about 8 years started to get fissures in the bags and were breaking apart. So I got excited and thought it meant that it was ephemeral and like us, and realized that wasn't the case, that it was actually just breaking apart and that it was polluting our environment, not just the ocean, but everywhere. So came together with a group of folks in 2009, co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition, and we've evolved since that time. But our main goal when we first created the organization was to encourage people to call it what it is. And that if what we were seeing just in the ocean alone of marine debris, if 70 to 90% of that was plastic, then we should be identifying it and calling it what it is, which is plastic and plastic pollution. So we created the organization, and again, we've evolved now into an advocacy and communications organization focused on, creating a more just and equitable regenerative world free of plastic pollution, which is a lofty goal, but we are aiming towards that. And in doing that work, also stopping the toxic impact of plastic and plastics on human health, animal health, the ocean, the environment, our air, our water, our soil, etc. I think when we began this, I had no idea that it would be such a monumental issue and that it has tentacles into everything. And I'm excited for our conversation and really excited to be here with Michael. But the fact that 99% of plastics are made from petrochemicals and oil and fracked and cracked gas is really important to realize, and we're not going to recycle our way out of this problem. So the coalition's now grown. We're just over 1,300 organizations and businesses, about 50-50. And the business component has really grown in the last 5 years. So there are a lot of interesting companies producing alternatives and solutions and infrastructure solutions to the issue. So
great.
Excited to be here.
Great. So Michael, I know you're involved in all kinds of sustainability stuff, all kinds of many different things. Tell me about your your interest in plastics.
So, one, in the main, I'm on Dianna's advisory board. It's really been a pleasure to be there. Come to this space really from, at the Solution Service, we're really thinking about scaling the sustainability solutions to what we call sectors and sovereigns, really sectors of the economy, states, sovereigns as they were, to drive the change that we know we need to drive. And it's well beyond just plastics. At the service, we're working on energy, renewable energy, working on finance, scaling those solutions, working with municipalities, working on health and well-being. And you can see that just in those our 4 anchor areas, they aren't part of the plastic problem, but really are sort of the sine qua non of putting the kill on this sort of menace on the planet, the plastic problem as it were. And we're doing that. We've been building out an effort on recycling plastics on the mechanical side, but also on the chemical side. But really, we see that in the medium term there, but really the longer term is towards hydrogen, because that's the thing where we've got to scale to get us to the renewable energy that we need. So the service is really working on a complex set of concerns, working with other partners, public, private partners. We've got some partners in the room. Some of you met Rob Roseneck, who's here with us. We've got some of our team here, Graham Arians in the audience. So really working on this, in the region in the Southwest, but really nationally and globally.
So just to follow up with you on this. So, in my years as a journalist covering climate change, I feel like I have a really good bullshit detector for when people know what they're talking about and when they don't, I just have an instinct for that.
You won't find that here, though.
But But the conversation about plastics confounds that sometimes, because I think even people who are really educated about climate don't understand the connection between plastic and climate. And we all kind of know that plastics are made from oil and that there's some link, but there's also a lot of people who will say to me, yeah, plastics are a problem, I get that, but that's not what we need to be talking about when we need to be talking about climate change. We need to be talking about this other stuff. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about that link.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would encourage folks, I mean, you already know this, but certainly folks in the audience, the key word isn't oil. It's actually petrochemicals, right? In the full sense of that word. Because it's really, the oil industry realizes that it's losing its game on energy. That's why one of the largest US residential solar installers is owned by Total, SunPower, right? So they're pivoting already, but they're also trying to hold the line on the production of petrochemicals. And it's really that petrochemicals problem, because you've got certainly the supply of oil driving the plastic production, but it's really about poisoning communities, that chemical side of that. So these things go together. And they're intimately bound up. So it's something that I think, certainly environmentalists, they got to do a little bit more homework and less virtue signaling, and really work on and understand the means of production of big problems like plastics.
Yeah. So you use an important word, Dianna, I know you think a lot about, which is poison. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about plastic compared to the sort of broader climate conversation is this sense of it being toxic, and it actually has an impact, benzene, things like that, on our bodies through the various, ingesting of it in various ways, water, food, all kinds of things. And I know that you guys have released a report recently about that. Talk to me a little bit about what we know and what we don't know about the impacts of plastic, and the way that it's a kind of motivation that is different than the motivation for action on climate, which is about larger scale changes, melting glaciers, heat waves, all kind of thing. And this is about you're going to get cancer if you put this in a microwave and then eat it, right? I mean,
yeah,
or whatever. But
I mean, you can look at it from a macro scale and from a micro scale. So to the question too that you just asked, Michael, the thing about plastic is the production of plastic, the entire chain, which is it's the extractive industries, so extraction through manufacturing, production. If it's designed for single use, a very short amount of time that we use it, and then it's instantly a waste management issue, and a lot of that is burnt. And it's called incineration or waste to energy or waste to fuel, and these all sound like good things, but many of those processes, all of those processes in some way release particulate pollution, dioxins, chemicals. So the whole chain contributes to it releases greenhouse gases, it contributes to global warming and climate change. It also is impacting all of our healths. So in all of the communities that we live in, and in particularly, it disproportionately impacts low-income communities, communities of color, BIPOC, indigenous communities are generally located across the fence from 76 Conoco or from these different companies. You can go on toxic tours and learn about it, which we just took a bunch of writers on last week. It's fascinating to finally make that connection. For me, I only really made that connection about 6 years ago. And I had already been doing the work around plastic and single-use plastics, but to realize that strong connection, all of these chemicals, that we are contributing to climate change and global warming, and that we are, at a more micro level, poisoning ourselves in our daily use of the majority of our food, beverages, beauty products, healthcare products, cleaning products are all packaged in plastic. And what does that mean? The chemicals that are used to make the plastic, not just that it's, the carbon source is coming from petrochemicals, but the additives, the bisphenols, the phthalates, these have been identified as endocrine disruptors. So they've been linked to breast cancer, brain cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes, obesity, lower sexual function, sterility, infertility, and that's just in studies of adults. It's also been linked to a bunch of issues in studies of newborn babies. And you can't study a newborn baby, but finding that their umbilical cord that they're born pre-polluted with over 330 different chemicals from EWG studies. So to me, any one or two of these facts should be utterly alarming for us. And it is shocking to me when I meet people who are really involved in the climate space or in working to get people to divest from fossil fuels who are not making the connection that plastic is a part. It is nestled in that issue. And that the petrochemical industry, like Michael was saying, their plan B is plastic. And really since COVID and COVID lockdown, there's been a huge ramp up in production of plastics and single-use plastics. So we're in this crazy cycle, and we really need a kind of massive system shift. And the work that we do is to help people on an individual level, but also to look at it like institutionally, if you have a school, if you have a business, and then to work on policy and legislation and support that.
So that's really, really true. And I think one of the complicated things about plastic, Michael, is that you kind of brought up a little bit, is, like in my own house with my kids, we get in arguments about recycle, don't recycle, Dad, you should be recycling or you shouldn't be. And this idea that if you're a good person, you can use plastic well and it'll be okay. And you know what I mean? There's a lot, yeah, but there's a lot of, you talked about virtue signaling before. There's a lot of virtue signaling around recycling, circular economy, all that kind of thing. But there's also, of course, a lot of myths about this idea that we can recycle, that we can use plastic in a responsible way. Yeah. Talk about that, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's absolutely important for individuals to do their part. No questions asked on that. But the reality is there's some problems that we face, and plastic pollution and pollution broadly is one of them, where, just in the case of, plastics, they've got a special position, especially in the US. They've got human rights, right? They're innocent until proven guilty, right? That's a place in a space that a right they don't actually deserve, because the data is in, it's been in for many decades, not just years, but really coming into half a generation, many generations of the pollution that they cause, the impacts that they cause on endocrine systems and human health systems and ecosystems and so forth. So when firms know that that's the case, because they see that data, they may deny it on TV, but they're tracking that data, and they continue to pollute, that's a form of sociopathy, right? That's a form of recidivistic criminal activity, corporate criminal activity. So when you put that together, the misplacement of human rights for bad stuff, innocent until proven guilty with chemicals and plastics, with the sociopathic activities of the firms that are producing this stuff, then the individual stuff is not enough. We've got to make the pressure and keep the heat, the street heat on those in the suites, C-suites and in government suites, to make these changes in rules and regulations. And that's actually one of the things that we're doing at Solution Service. We call it, in polite circles, we call it policy advice. I like to call it policy agitation. Working and really guiding, legislatures, regulators to make tougher rules and laws on plastics and other things to accelerate the good stuff and put the kill on the bad stuff. That's really where we've got to go. And we get there in part when folks are doing their part and telling their elected officials that things need to be done. So we don't want to write off that individual stuff, but we shouldn't get tricked or fooled that that's enough, because it's not.
Right.
Can I add to that, actually? I think that industry, in creating Keep America Beautiful and these different campaigns in response to Earth Day in 1970, it was a very intentional strategy that they used to move the responsibility for pollution onto the public.
Right.
I just wanted to say that.
Right. Which is, what BP tried to do with their, footprint thing and all that.
Yeah.
But so one of the scary things to me about the plastic problem is the sort of ubiquity of plastic in our lives and the difficulty of ridding ourselves of it. You go buy Thai food and it comes in a styrofoam container and there's nothing, how do you, it's just like everywhere. It drives me insane. And there's this sense that we've made progress and, that there's less plastic straws now and things like that. But it's still everywhere. And it feels like this sort of octopus that is in our lives. So what is the vision for how we rid ourselves of this? What does the post-plastic world look like?
Well, for me,
not that there is is there a post-plastic world?
I'm an artist, so yes, I can imagine that there is a plastic-free future that we are moving towards. What does that look like? There's a lot of different kinds of individual behaviors that you can take, and we do our best to provide guides and information for people that are all available for free. So, for example, we with Made Safe Certified a Healthy Pregnancy Guide. But it's really a plastic-free pregnancy guide. And it's actually really a plastic-free living guide that is useful to everyone, that literally goes room by room in your home and what you can do in your individual action. That's all great. But we need also to be working on, and we are working on, the Global Plastic Treaty. So we just had one of our team members come back from Paris and from Inc. 2, and that negotiation's happening, but the petrochemical industry is crawling all over it and trying to get their language and their messaging into it so that they can continue business as usual. And as long as they keep us focused on downstream solutions like cleanup solutions, we won't address all the different source points where this is not only impacting us, but poisoning everybody. So.
You know, at the Solution Service, we're working with a number of companies, some startups, some a little bit larger, that are working on a variety of solutions that are absolutely outside of the sort of the petrochemical plastic box. Some in the algae space, some in the biological space. There's a whole host of innovations. I think when all is said and done, just because I know we're close on time, we're going to look back and wonder, what were they doing in that crazy century of plastic? We've had a world where we haven't had these things, and we're going to have a world where we're not going to have them again. That's going to take some fighting, because industry is holding fast to one of its last anchors. But there's a tremendous amount of innovation that's going on. And we're turning on a fund in the CPG space that's focused on non-petrochemical solutions to packaging and so forth. So there's a lot of activity that's going on, and that's continuing apace, in part because the science is there, as Dianna was saying, of the problems of this stuff, and then the desires of both individuals like yourself, like your kids, but also of whole countries coming together in the negotiations to tackle this problem.
Yeah. So I mean, can you imagine? Well, I think a question that a lot of people have, and just to sort of wrap this up, is there like a better plastic world? I mean, is there a world in which we create and live with plastics that are like good plastics?
The last thing that we ever want to be with, I'll take liberties with the crowd, is we don't want to be involved with the same shit with different flies. So there isn't such a world put. Like that.
There isn't?
There isn't, no.
Right.
And we don't need to have that world, right, because the innovation is already there that's beyond plastics. So we wouldn't anchor ourselves to the same foolishness. There's no reason to do that.
I mean, I also think one of the campaigns that we've been working on, it's an initiative called Flip the Script on Plastics in Film and Television. So it's about changing the narrative. As long as we continue to change the narrative, show visual examples of the world that we want to be living in and to create, we will move in that direction, and we are moving in that direction. And that direction includes all these other alternatives that are available, from glass to steel to wood to paper to plant-based alternatives. And I'm talking about non-plastic versions that are made with plants of things that function somewhat like plastic. But I think there are a lot of things that we use plastic for that we don't need. Right. We don't need those things. There's all this extraneous packaging, et cetera. And it's better not to poison ourselves. So again, we need a whole rethink and redesign, and it's a big system shift. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying too about plastic losing its social license in a way, right? This cultural shift that is like tobacco did or something like that. It was like, no.
Well, and don't be fooled. Plastic is marketed to us as being recyclable with all those numbers and the arrows. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, plastic was never designed to be recycled. It is still not designed to be recycled. And we've created like 400, tons of it, and less than 9% has been recycled or really downcycled in some fashion, so turned into something lesser. So we have to really learn about it, understand it, and then make choices to move away from it. But whatever we can do as business to provide people with alternatives, non-toxic alternatives, we need to move in that direction across the board for everything.
Right.
That's important.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're over time. So this is a great subject. You guys are doing great work. I encourage you all to check out the Plastics Coalition and support
Plastic Pollution Coalition.
Plastic Pollution Coalition.
Yeah.
And check out their work. It's really important. And this is sort of the next struggle is this dealing with plastic, and I really applaud you both for the work you're doing. So thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
And can I just add, if anybody wants to talk to Michael, talk to him about the fund that they're creating, because they're doing great work and it's important. So I have a lot of respect for everyone who's at this and everything that we're working on, and excited to work together.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff.